Hello and good morning to all. My name is Michelle. I'm the crochet designer and tech editor behind Tales of Knots. Today I'm going to be walking you through how to make this, the Tunisian Winnie Cowl. Now this is actually a reversible design. It's made using the technique of Tunisian in the round. All the details are in the blog post as well as in the pattern PDF, but if you are new to the technique, do not worry because I'm going to be showing you everything you need to know to get started. So let's get stitching. For this pattern we're going to be using a tape measure, a stitch marker, a pair of scissors and a yarn needle. We're going to be using 2 balls of yarn. I'm using Wonder Fluff from Winnie Crochet and it's the colour Bear for the forward pass. And I have another ball in the colour Beehive Heather for the return pass. Both of these are 142 yards per 50-gram balls and they're really soft and airy. And then of course we need our Tunisian hooks. Now, if you've worked Tunisian crochet before, you might be familiar with these long straight style of Tunisian hooks from Furls Crochet. These are great for working in rows, but for working Tunisian in the round, we need a double-ended hook. So this will have a hook of the same size at either end. So previously my go-to interchangeable set has been this Clover Takumi interchangeable hook set. These are great, they've got swivel cords as well as stoppers, but unfortunately, they don't come in very many large sizes. So today instead I'm going to be using my brand new Knitter's Pride set for the first time. So this is my set from Knitter's Pride. You've got a pen here and then lots of sizes, including larger sizes. At the bottom here you have a pouch for all your cables and stoppers. And then up here on this side you even have some magnets to hold a pattern if you need it. So for the Winnie Cowl today, we're going to use this hook here, the M13, which is a 9mm, and the L11, which is an 8mm. And then our cable here to connect them. So let's get those attached. So we just screw the hook into the cable like so. You might have noticed that these are different sizes. I'll explain how we're going to make that work in just a minute. So then we just take the little key it comes with, make sure this is done up really securely. And then we take the other hook, screw it into the other end of the cable. Again, just take the little key and just make sure that's nice and tight. Okay, so here we have our double-ended Tunisian crochet hook. Now, when you do get the cables out of the case at first, they'll probably look like this. They're pretty tightly coiled, and this can make them a little difficult to work with. So just pop the cable in hot water for a minute or two. This will make them much more relaxed and pliable, so much easier to work with. So most interchangeable hook sets will only have one of each size. So we're using an M13 and an L11. We'll be using this M13 as our forward pass hook and then the smaller one here for our return pass. So this is the one that is going to determine how big our stitches are. So I can use this one to pull up loops and then I can use one size smaller for the return pass. So let's just grab the yarn we're going to use for our forward pass and we'll start by making a slip knot. And we'll place it on the M13 hook. Just tighten that up a bit. And the first thing we're going to do is our foundation chains. So we yarn over and pull through. We're going to do 80 of these to begin with. Keep these nice and loose and this will help you out when we're working into them on our setup row. So I'll keep going with these feel free to pause the video and I will meet you back when we've got 80 chains. Here we are with our 80 chains. Normally you'd need some turning chains for your first stitches, but in Tunisian crochet the first loop on the hook counts as the first stitch, so we don't need to do any additional turning chains. So for our setup round, we're going to pull up a loop in each chain across. So we're going to start with the second chain from the hook. I like to work in the back bumps personally. We yarn over and we pull up a loop. Let's do that again in the next one. Go under the back bump, yarn over and pull up a loop. And we just leave them sitting there on the hook. We're going to keep pulling up loops all the way along. Make sure you sort of spread them out a bit so that they don't start to get too tight. Pull up a loop in the next one. And again in the next chain. As you can see here, they're starting to bunch up on the hook in front of my hand. Now you don't want to do that because that's going to give you a hand cramp. What you need to do is move them down slightly and get used to holding the hook with the yarn under your fingers. If you're a knitter, you're not going to have any problem with that, but if you're a crocheter, that might feel a little weird at first, and it can just take a bit of time to get used to. So keep moving them down, and we're still working into the back bumps. And we're going to keep going until our hook is comfortably full, let's say. Okay, so we've got several loops here. Now I'm going to show you how to add the return pass yarn. Now if you're already familiar with working Tunisian crochet in rows on a straight hook like this, the forward pass picks up loops on the hook, and then you would, with the same yarn, chain one and then work them off the hook in the opposite direction with the standard return pass of yarn over and pull through 2 loops, which completes our stitches. But when we're working Tunisian in the round, we pick up loops with the front hook in the forward pass direction, and then we're going to use the back hook for the return pass to work them off in the same direction. So the first thing we need to do is slide these stitches all the way along our cable to the back hook. Like this. Then we turn our work, slide them up the hook. Just group them together a little bit as we're going to be working them off the hook. We take our return pass yarn and we're going to chain one to join. So we just pop the yarn on the end of our hook and pull through 1 loop to join the return pass. So this is essentially the same as the chain one that would begin a normal return pass if you're working in rows. But because we're going to work in continuous rounds, we only need to do this once. So now we continue with a standard return pass. We're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops, one of the return pass colour and one of the forward pass colour. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Just make sure that tail's not in the way. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And it's basically as easy as that. Yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. It's nice and easy here to see our 2 different loops as they're different colours. So you can start to see here we have our forward pass setup row and our first return pass, which is working the stitches off the hook as we go. If your hook has a bit of a longer shaft, just remember to push it down a bit so that loop is being worked at the right size and doesn't end up too tight. So we keep moving them along the hook as we work. Make sure you're only going through 2 loops at a time. Yarn over, pull through 2. All the way along back to where we got to with our forward pass. And you can see here, these front loops are a little loose because this is still our working yarn. So these 2 or 3 loops here, we always want to leave them unworked for the moment to make sure that we maintain that loop tension. So then we're going to turn our hooks back around and we just slide those stitches that we've got left along to our forward pass hook again. So this is what we've got so far. Let's just move that out of the way. We've completed the loops we've picked up so far, and now we need to continue picking up loops in our forward pass again. So let's go into the back bump, pull up a loop. And again, we repeat this along until our hook is full again. So here we go, ready to turn our work again. We slide our stitches along to the back hook. Just push them on, turn our work. And we're now ready to continue working our return pass, and we're just going to continue where we left off. So yarn over, pull through 2. And remember, we don't need to do that chain 1 again to start. We did it once at the beginning of the round to join our new yarn, but we will not need to chain again throughout these continuous rounds. So the return pass is just going to continuously follow along behind the forward pass all the way around our project. So we work them all off the hook until we have about 3 loops left to maintain the tension. Let's pull them all the way along to the front hook, turn our work around to the other side. Let's disentangle our yarn from our plants. Back to the forward pass. And we're ready to keep picking up loops in the forward pass again. So we're just going to repeat this all the way along our chain. Okay, so as you can see, we've worked all the way along our chain. We've left our 3 loops here on the hook to maintain our tension. And we have this long setup row here of stitches. So to count them, you count these forward pass loops we can see here. We should have 80 stitches. So although we worked in the second chain from the hook, our first loop counted as a stitch already. So now we need to join the ends. Let's just make sure again that it's not twisted. Because we're working in continuous rounds, we're going to work directly into the first stitch. So this first loop is the first stitch of our round, and each of these vertical loops are our stitches. And you can see the front and back bars of the loops. So for the first round, if you get the PDF version of the pattern, you get this handy colour chart which might help you. It's got stitches 1 to 40 along the bottom and then the rounds up the side. So we start here, we always read this chart from right to left, working each row of the chart twice through and then back up to the next round. So these orange squares, these are worked as Tunisian Reverse Stitch, and then where you have the white squares, these are worked as Tunisian Knit Stitch. So we're beginning with a round of Tunisian Reverse Stitches. So directly into the first stitch, we're going to work, you can see on this edge here, this is the front vertical bar of the loop and this is the back vertical bar. So we're going to insert our hook through the back vertical bar. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Let's just make sure that beginning tail is out of the way. Now we're going to grab our stitch marker and just pop it through this loop. And this marks this stitch as the first stitch of our round. So pull your work towards you slightly to see the back. Insert the hook through the back of the vertical bar, yarn over and pull up a loop. Again, this is the front and then this is the back, so just turn it over towards you slightly. Insert your hook through the back of the bar from right to left and pull up a loop. Make sure that you're pulling up your hook to sit on the top of the work and that you're not keeping it at the back, because this will make the stitches really tight. Again, we go through the back vertical bar, yarn over, pull up a loop, through the next back vertical bar, pull up a loop. Once you get the hang of this and you get a rhythm going, this is a really fast stitch to work. So you should notice as you get going, when you work the Tunisian reverse stitch, the return pass is showing on the front. Okay? If we were to work stitches through the front, the return pass colour is pushed to the back, and then the white shows on the front. So this is basically how we achieve our colour work. We're going to work Tunisian reverse stitches, and our return pass will be showing on the front. And then when we work the knit stitches, it's our forward pass yarn that will be showing on the front. You can see here, this loop immediately to the left of the hook has already been worked. So this is our next stitch. So we go through the back vertical bar and we pull up a loop. And then we go through the back of the next stitch and pull up a loop. So just make sure that you don't end up working into the same loop twice and accidentally increasing your stitch count. Just like with our setup round, we're going to continue working these until our hook is full. It's looking a little full here already. So let's slide our stitches along to the other end and turn our work. And then we simply just keep going with our return pass all the way around. This doesn't change with a new round or with whatever stitch we're working. We just keep working each stitch by yarning over, pulling through 2 loops. When you go past the beginning of the round here, this can just feel a little loose. We'll tighten it up and bring it together when we weave in the ends. So we just keep working our return pass until we catch up with ourselves at our forward pass. Okay, so we've got back to 3 loops left on the hook. So we slide them along, turn back to the forward pass hook. Just make sure you haven't got any of your yarn running through the middle of your round now. Just untangle it now if you do. Let's grab the yarn. There we go. And we continue working the reverse stitch. So this entire round is just the Tunisian reverse stitch. You can see all the orange squares on the chart. We just go around working reverse stitches. So that's our stitch pattern. We work into the back of the next stitch, pull up a loop, and again in the next stitch, and the next stitch, pull up a loop. So let's just zoom in a little so you can see it a bit closer. Keep sliding them along as we go. Don't forget, don't give yourself a hand cramp. And we keep going, working these Tunisian reverse stitches all the way along our round again until we're ready to turn. So if you haven't been turning your work back and forth the same way each time, you'll start to get yourself a little twisted. So let's just get ourselves back in order again. Okay, and we'll go back to our back hook, turn our work, push all of our stitches along a bit. Now you can see on the wrong side, or the back side of our work, this is our forward pass yarn, and it's showing here on the inside of the cowl, while the gold is showing on the outside. Ooh, let's just make sure our loops aren't hiding. Yarn over, pull through 2, and we keep going just the same way that we have been doing until we've got 3 loops left. Slide the stitches along, turn back around. Again, I didn't turn the right way around, so I've got myself tangled again. And so for the first few rounds, this is all we're going to be doing. We're working Tunisian reverse stitches onto our hook through the back vertical bar in our forward pass, and then we're completing them off the hook with the return pass. Now you might have heard that Tunisian crochet has a tendency to curl upwards when you're working it. So one of the ways that we can minimize this is to make sure that you're properly pulling your stitches up to sit on top of the work. So if you're working stitches in the front, make sure your hook isn't sat in front of your previous row, but really pull it up on top. But with this pattern, because we're actually working into the back side of the stitches for our first row, it's not going to do that curl at all. So we can completely eliminate it. So there's a tip for you. If you're making a Tunisian pattern, whether rows or rounds, and your stitches have a tendency to curl a lot, perhaps if your forward pass and return pass yarn are the same colour, try working around the reverse stitches to start with, and then it won't curl. Okay, so we're ready to turn again and work the stitches off. I'm going to keep going and I will come back when I'm back near the beginning of the round again. So now I'm back at the first stitch of the round again, which is this marked vertical bar here. So I don't really need to work any more stitches off the hook just yet, so we can go straight into the second round. So we'll just take the stitch marker out to make it a little easier to see. The next round again is a round of Tunisian reverse stitches. So just as we've been doing, we work our first stitch directly into the stitch below. Let's pick up our marker again and pop it through that loop. And then we keep going, working reverse stitches all the way around. As you can see again, it's pushing that return pass to sit at the front again. If for whatever reason you didn't want to use a stitch marker or you forgot to put it back, you can obviously also see where the beginning of the round is by the yarn tails. As I mentioned, we'll close this little gap when we weave in our tails and you won't notice it at all. Okay, so our first 3 rounds according to the chart are Tunisian reverse stitches. So I'm going to work these off camera and then I will meet you back here at the beginning of round 4. So here we are now at the beginning of round 4. Let's just count our rounds. So although I've worked 3 pattern rounds, you'll be able to see 4 because this first round here is our setup round. So when you're working reverse stitches, it's pushing the return pass down to show in the round underneath. So here, where this first lot of return pass stitches are showing, this is actually our setup round. Then this is round 1, this is round 2. And then round 3 here, the one sitting on the hook, is the one I'm just finishing off. So if we look at these stitches we've completed behind our hook, you can almost see 4 rounds of return pass yarn, but it's 3 rounds of the pattern. So we've got our setup round, round 1, round 2, our third round here at the top. So I'm back here at the first stitch of the round, here where our marker is. I've worked this stitch and so this here is the next stitch. So if we look at the colour chart, our first stitch of round 4 is going to be a Tunisian knit stitch, and then we're going to work 14 reverse stitches again. So to work a knit stitch, let's just take this marker out to make it a little easier to see the loops. So you can see here these front vertical bars. Up to now we've been working in the back vertical bar here to work a reverse stitch. Now we want to work going in from the front, and you can see if I just pick it up, the front vertical bar here. So for a knit stitch we need to go in between the front and the back vertical bar all the way through to the back side of the work. yarn over, pull up a loop all the way through the vertical bars to the front of the work. And you can just start to see here that it's the forward pass yarn that's going to be showing on the front, and then the return pass is now pushed to the back. So we're only doing one knit stitch, so it's not super clear just yet. Hopefully you'll start to see it better as we keep working. So let's mark that stitch again for the beginning of the round. Now we're back to working our reverse stitches, and we're going to do 14. So this loop here to the left has already been worked, so this is our next stitch. Turn it towards you, go through the back vertical bar and pull up a loop. So this is our knit stitch here that we can see from the front, and our reverse stitch coming from the back, and we need to work another 13 of these along to the next knit stitch. And number 14 here. Okay, so we've got 14 reverse stitches. Now I don't recommend turning halfway through a section like this to work the stitches off, because otherwise when you return pass up to the last 2 or 3 stitches on the hook, it's really easy to lose count of where you've got to. So I always recommend working your set of 4 pass stitches up to a natural stopping point, so for us where our stitches change, before we turn to work the return pass. So you can see the knit stitch here, then we've done 14 reverse stitches, and now we need to do 6 knit stitches. So if we look closely, this loop immediately to the left of the hook is the one we've already worked, so you can see the reverse stitch is coming out of it. So this stitch here is our next one. You can see the front of the vertical bar and the back, and we're going to go through the middle of those to the back, pull up a loop through to the front, and you should be able to see your loop is coming through those vertical bars. So that's one. Let's do it again in the next one. Go through the middle, pull up a loop back to the front. So that's number 3. Again for number 4. Remember to pull those loops up nice and high to the top of your row. So don't leave your hook sitting here in front of your row when you go into the next one, or it'll be way too tight. Pull it up first, then go into the next stitch. And that's number 6. So you can see a little bit better now, hopefully, as we've worked a couple. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, and the forward pass is what we can see from the front, and then the return pass is now showing on the back. So that's 6. Now we're going to do another 14 reverse stitches. So we've gone through this one here. Even though it looks like it's the next stitch, if you turn to the back, you can see, let's just turn it all the way over, this is the next vertical bar to work into. So we reverse stitch in this one here, and the next 13. And number 14. Okay, now we're going to work another 6 knit stitches again. So remember, if we look at the back, this one has been worked. This is our next vertical bar. So we go through the middle to the back, pull up a loop nice and tall. In the next one, 3, that's 4, 5, and 6. Okay, here would be a good place for me to turn my work. I've done my 6 knit stitches, and I know that I'm going to be doing reverse stitches next, so let's slide them along and turn. Push them onto the hook, all these little ruffles here. And I'm going to work these stitches off with the return pass, and then I will meet you back at our forward pass again. So we're back at our forward pass again. We need to work our next set of reverse stitches. Okay, so this is what I mean. It's really easy to lose your place if you've turned halfway through a section, but I know that now I need to start with 14 reverse stitches. And we're just working this row on the chart twice through, alternating 6 knit stitches followed by 14 reverse stitches, all the way around until we get back to the beginning. And we're back to our knit stitches again. This is our next stitch, So through to the back and pull up a loop. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now we're back to our reverse stitches. Okay, here's the next set of knit stitches. We're going to do 5 to finish the round here because we started with 1. So that's 2, 3, 4, and then number 5 in the last stitch here. And that's great. We can see here we still have the right number of stitches in our round. So that's the end of round 4. So if we look at the pattern chart for round 5, we begin with 2 knit stitches and then we're going to work 12 reverse stitches. So we're going to work 1 knit stitch here, then number 2. Let's just move that round marker up to the first knit stitch we made. So now we're working 12 reverse stitches and then I'm going to turn and I'm going to work them off in the return pass. So here we go, we're back to our forward pass again. I've worked the stitches off and we now need to do 8 knit stitches. So we've got 1, 2, this is number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this is number 8. This one can be a little fiddly going from working into knit stitches below to then working into a reverse stitch. And now you can see the hexagon pattern is starting to take shape. So we've got another 12 reverse stitches to do. Again, you can see that our working yarn is already coming out through that stitch. So our next one is this one here. Turn your work towards you, put your hook through that back vertical bar. And so for this round, we're just going to alternate 12 reverse stitches and 8 knit stitches. And then don't forget, as we started the round with 2 knit stitches, we'll be finishing off the round at the end with 6 knit stitches. So I've just finished this round and you can really see now the pattern is starting to come out in the different colours. You can see on the wrong side here, well, rather just the inside, there isn't really a wrong side, the reverse pattern is coming out too. So that's all there is to it. For the main body of the chart, we follow each line of instructions from right to left twice through. Write all over this chart if you need to, so then you know at a glance how many of each different type of stitch you're going to do each time. And we've got 34 rounds to do, so then I'm going to meet you up at these last rows up here and then I will show you how to bind off. So here we are at the end of our cowl. We're back at the first stitch of the round. I've finished working round 33 here, working the colour chart twice through. And now this last round here then is a little bit different because it's a bind off round. So if you are familiar with knitting, you'll know about binding off your stitches. If not, it's basically where we finish off the stitches so they can't come undone. But in Tunisian it's slightly different because we don't quite need to do it for the same reason. And I'll explain more in a minute. So we've got to the beginning of the round here. I'm just going to stop here and I'm going to return pass all the remaining stitches in the round because we no longer need this return pass yarn. So let's just turn our work. Slide along to our back hook. Where's that yarn gone? Okay, there's our marker for the beginning of the round. We're going to yarn over and pull through 2. I'm going to work all these stitches off. Just give that a little tug to tighten that yarn there. Work this one off the hook, and then this last one here also. Now I'm going to take my scissors and let's cut the yarn. Let's turn it back around so you can see it from the front. Oh, untangle myself. Okay, there we go. Now I'm simply going to pull that out because we don't need the return pass yarn anymore. And I'm just going to tighten that up a bit so it's now the same size as the other loops. Okay, so you'll notice we no longer have a hook in our project. So if we were knitting, this would be a problem because stitches are live, so we'd need to bind off so that they can't come undone. But in Tunisian, you can see we've fastened off, and if I give that a tug or if I pull this one, nothing's going to come undone. The stitches are not live the same way that they are in knitting. However, you can see that there's a gap. So when you do the forward pass, it leaves space for the hook, and then when you're finishing the stitches with a return pass, it leaves a gap there. So in Tunisian, we call the final round the bind off round. Basically, it's just to fill in the gaps that we've left. So there are lots of different ways that you can do a bind off. For this pattern, I'm going to do a slip stitch bind off, but I'm going to do it in pattern, as we say. So that just means that you bind off the stitch in the same way that your pattern is telling you to work that stitch. So our final round is reverse stitches. So I'm going to continue pulling up the loops as for the reverse stitch. So we insert the hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then I'm going to bind it off using the next stitch, working it as a slip stitch. So then I have this one loop left on the hook now, and I'm going to do the same again with the next stitch. Pull up a loop as for a Tunisian reverse stitch, and then I will pull through the loop already on my hook. Pull up a loop in the next stitch, work a slip stitch. Pull up a loop, pull it through the one that is already on your hook. And so we're essentially just slip stitching around, working in the back vertical bars, the same way we've been doing for all of our reverse stitches. And so you can see here, this eliminates the gap as we're pushing the return pass to the front, just like another round of Tunisian reverse stitches would have done. And it mirrors this bottom chain edge that is in our white yarn. This top edge now has the same running along the top from our slip stitches. So we just continue going around, working our slip stitches. Don't make them too tight. Just like with any slip stitching, it's important to keep these nice and loose so we don't bunch up the fabric at all. So I'm going to do this all the way around, back to the beginning, and then I will meet you in the last stitch of the round. Okay, as you can see, I am almost back to the beginning of the round. We've got the last stitch here. So let's take the scissors and we'll cut the yarn. So you might notice I've disconnected my cable and hook because I didn't want it flopping around behind me. So again, we'll just pull this hook out to fasten off the yarn. Now we're going to take our yarn needle, thread our yarn, and we're going to do an invisible join. So this is basically just joining it so that it looks like a stitch. So I'm just going to pull it through this first stitch here and pull it a little tighter. Just make sure we haven't got a gap, and it also hides that return pass end so that we can't see it on the front. So now I'm going to pass the yarn under the top two loops of the first stitch of the round. And then I'm going to go back down through the middle of the last slip stitch we made. Okay, and this basically just makes the join look sort of like another stitch, so it's not really noticeable. I'm going to weave in these ends, and you can just use that return pass yarn tail, just cover up any loops on the front that might look out of place. There we go, just pull the end through. Let's snip the end off. And there, you can just even this out a bit. You could even block it out if you want to, but I don't really think it's going to need it. So I've done the same on the bottom edge. And now you're ready to wear your Winnie Cowl. And of course, don't forget my favourite part, you can even wear it inside out.